I think recently the most topic that has been crossing my mind is how can the youth, especially those who are in the university or are joining university, how will they build career pathways for this upcoming AI era? And again, it's not related to a certain industry. I see that this is across any industry. It's how people really need to understand, how can they use those tools? I mean, congratulations on deploying it everywhere in the organization. But if this is not being, if people are not being empowered to understand, okay, how can they use it? When can they use it? What are their boundaries? And get this kind of flow going, will have no clue. I mean, and one last thing that I would say would designate this is what we call the introspection. It's really going deep inside and understanding, I like this situation, I love this place, but what's happening inside? That's the real question.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. And today we have Mena from Microsoft. So Mena is a senior Azure cloud solution architect for Microsoft, who I've been lucky enough to speak to a number of times, and we've had some great conversations already. And I said, as always, as soon as I meet someone interesting, I try and get them onto Project Flux so we can share their insights with all of our listeners. So Mena, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Really good to see you again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and definitely looking forward to our conversation today.
Excellent. And just before we started recording, I did ask you a question that's been on my mind actually for a long time. And then I said, actually, I think some people on the podcast find this interesting. So I'm going to ask you again. So pretend you haven't heard this. But how would you pronounce Azure? Is it, I hear people say Azure, all kinds of different things. What is actually the correct pronunciation?
So there is no correct pronunciation. I say Azure. Some other people say Azure.
Yeah.
So there is no consensus within the organization on that.
Okay, so we're all right. Everybody's right and everybody's wrong at the same time. Well, that's good to know, because it's one of those things, I say it and then I think to myself, God, I've just made a fool of myself again, saying something wrong. But that's good to know that that's not the case.
It's a bit like SQL, SQL.
Or tomato.
Yeah, like SQL and SQL, exactly.
Yeah.
And before joining Microsoft, I always wondered around the Azure, what is right? I don't have the experience maybe, but after like having the past years in Microsoft, I would assure you everyone is right.
That's good to hear. So we're starting off with everyone in a positive manner. But, work for Microsoft must be amazing. I mean, you're really at the cutting edge of a lot that's going on at the moment. And that's why I really enjoyed some of our conversations up until now. So I always start by asking our guests this question, which is, what is on your mind at the moment? What's the big thing? And probably from your perspective, particularly professionally, I'd be interested in, because you really are at the cutting edge of what's happening. What's the big thing that you're excited about?
Well, I think recently the most topic that has been crossing my mind is how can the youth, especially those who are in the university or are joining university, how will they build career pathways for this upcoming AI era? And again, it's not related to a certain industry. I see that this is across any industry. It's how can you build the new careers that we will be expecting in this new era. And for the youth, because I've had a good chance to speak to a group of students in the university, and there is a hunger around, okay, what is there? What is possible? So going to them and assuring them that, okay, you have a huge amount of possibilities. That's where this is my top of mind, and this is what I've been thinking of. How can we help them choose something that is relevant to this new era?
Yeah, it's a really important point, isn't it? Because I heard someone speak the other day saying that the education system around the world really was built for the industrial era, and so there's a lot of children and kids coming out of education prepared for a world that no longer exists, and it's really difficult. I've got kids at that age. I've got one just about to start university, one just about to start A levels, please God. You think to yourself, okay, these foundational skills are important, but they're probably not learning enough about what the future careers could be.
Exactly.
Do you recognize any new roles that are coming out? Because with ChatGPT, there was prompt engineering, which was becoming a hot new role. with the years that have passed, do you see any new roles that might develop?
There are new roles that are developing, but they're not, I'm not seeing them clearly right now. But I see that there are roles that are clearly going to disappear.
Yes.
And this is something that we can never deny. It's really about how can we go with the flow in this regard. If whatever job is disappearing, okay, what is next? What will you be doing? And again, that's a discussion I've been part of a lot of with different audiences. And the real thing is, it's really about going with this AI flow and not saying, oh, I'm not related to this. It's not going to touch my job. This is kind of being under the rock, because at the end of the day, it will impact every single industry wherever you are. Some countries are picking it up fast. Others are still in the process of understanding how it will be utilized. But at the end of the day, wherever and whatever industry you're in, I see that this is something you need to be planning for.
Yeah.
So this is my view on this.
Very wise words, I think. And what's interesting, you obviously work for Microsoft, who you're 50 years old now, right?
Yes,
It's 50 years old.
exactly. Microsoft is officially 50 years old.
Yeah, which is crazy,
Wow.
right? Because you still think of them as a cutting edge tech
You
company,
do.
and it's 50 years old. But
It's a long time.
It is, isn't it? But the thing is, for Microsoft, I suppose this is nothing new, because there was a big revolution there with Windows and with the
Exactly.
Office suite. And if you were an accountant back in the late 70s or the early 80s, the spreadsheet had such a
Exactly.
significant impact. But it hasn't got rid of the accountancy profession. It's just changed it. It's changed it. And I think it's going to be a very similar thing with what happens with AI as well. So probably even more profound. But that's why I'm really interested in, you've had quite a long and diverse career. You've worked in different sectors, telecoms, government, tech. But was there a turning point where I call it the light bulb moment, Mena, where it went off for you and said, okay, this is the future. AI is the future? I
think for me, the moment I got interested in AI, and back then it was part of my Master's of Software Engineering in 2009, and we had a lot of different subjects. But what really interested me was a subject called data mining.
Yeah.
And this was where it was a brand new world and it was presented by Professor. He is passed right now, but he really was very passionate about this. His name is Professor Mustafa Hunaim. He was part of Nile University back in Egypt, and he was passionate about it. He really taught us this kind of the spirit of data mining when we talked about it back then.
What sort of time was this? What sort of era was this?
That was 2009. So
okay, yeah.
It was very early days in my dictionary.
Yeah.
There wasn't yet the big data science discussions yet. But it felt for me that this is the next best thing. And ever since then, I've been working on developing my knowledge there in whatever way that is available. But again, I would say right now, the knowledge available and the possibility of learning is much easier than it was like 10 or 11 or 12.
Isn't it? There's loads of amazing resources out there. I noticed this week when I was putting the newsletter together that OpenAI have just released some free resources to learn. So it's all there.
Exactly.
But also Microsoft, I would say, are one of the best with their learning platforms. Microsoft Learn is very good at showing you how to just work through their different tools and then get certifications as well. And it's really clear because you can share it on LinkedIn and when someone's gone through and learned something on Microsoft, because you guys have a good interface, good user experience. So that's one thing I would say Microsoft do very well.
And the certifications, you got the certificates, so you can go on and you can become a Power BI certified person.
Yes.
So it's really cool. I do. And I think, Microsoft went through these different, well, let's move on to Microsoft, right? Because I want to ask you, and just wanted to appreciate for everyone, obviously anything we talk about is your views, not Microsoft views. So we'll get that caveat in right now, because we're going to ask you about certain things. So we just want to make sure that these are your views, not Microsoft views. But we're big fans of what Microsoft are doing, because at the end of the day, most businesses are on the Microsoft platform.
Yeah.
So it's what people are going to be familiar with. So whilst there's lots of people using what Google are producing and Gemini and things like that, a lot of people won't be on that platform. So their first exposure to AI is going to be through something like Copilot. So it has to be good, and it has to be, because you can lose people quite quickly. So Microsoft obviously making huge investments through Copilot. Do you know what the deeper strategy is behind this shift? Is it a case of what everyone's doing, just chucking mud and hoping something will stick because everyone's early days of AI, we're not sure where it is? Or is there a more ingrained strategy there about how Microsoft are going to use Copilot to really change the way that people work in offices?
I mean, I think one thing that I would go to is the mission that we have. And we're still referring to. And interestingly, this mission continues to evolve as we are evolving. So basically, empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, that's ultimately what we are trying to do. And investing more in the Copilot and AI, it's more about meeting every person, whatever their experience is, and helping them. We used to have this word called democratizing AI. I think we're using it less because right now AI is democratized everywhere. Everyone can use it.
Yep.
And that's ultimately the goal. That's ultimately where we're heading. We are making every single tool AI enabled, so you wouldn't need to learn another tool to be in this kind of AI flow. And again, the most recent announcement we had on our anniversary on 4th of April, your AI companion, that kind of explains where we're heading with this. We want it to be your companion, your helper, and this is where we are heading. So there is no, and again, one of the things that I'm seeing is it becomes a challenge in a lot of organizations that they are expecting that they need to be having some kind of super AI expertise to go on this AI journey.
Yeah, it's not the case, is it?
This is not the case.
No.
Just start wherever you are. If even you're working with a PowerPoint, you can start being part of this AI flow. So whatever you're doing and whatever tool you're using and you're used to, this is where we are heading towards. Getting Copilot inside that tool doesn't, so you don't worry about, I need to learn another technology. Oh, I will miss that train because it's not relevant to me. That's where we are kind of embracing this idea everyone is on board on AI. How can we make your journey easier? So this is my view on this.
Well, that's brilliant, and it's it aligns with our mission. The whole reason we started Project Flux was exactly for that, Mena. It's to make people in the project profession understand that this isn't something for the tech nerds. This is something for everybody. But there's still a way to go. So I just got back from a conference in Athens, and there was 250 project managers in the audience, and I asked a question: how many people have got Copilot? Access to Copilot, and a lot of hands went up. And then I asked follow-up questions: how many people are using it properly? And it went down, because I think, like you say, there's a belief that, okay, this new shiny tool's come on, but it's not for me, or I need some training. And I think training does help, but it doesn't need to be, it's not like you've got to learn how to code in Python or anything like that. Exactly. So for the most people listening to this podcast, God bless them all, there'll be your average project manager, and they'll be juggling timelines, they'll be juggling people's, they'll be the hair on fire trying to, meet a deadline. For that person that's seen Copilot pop up, they might have summarized an email with it, but they really haven't had time to do it and they think it's not for them. How can it be a game changer for them?
So interestingly, one of the things that I found was relevant to project managers is Copilot for Project, which is part of Dynamics 365's project operations. So this can help project managers build a work breakdown structure from just a description in natural language. It puts the structure, and the project manager comes in and fills in maybe the details that might have been missed out by Copilot. Another thing is around the risks and mitigation plan. So it can actually help prioritize what are the risks that are facing a certain project. And third is around the report generation. And this is something very critical as part of any project manager's job. And again, we have a lot of tools. So Copilot for Project helps, but also Power BI, as you previously have mentioned, it is really doing a great job right now, because it's really taking the cue from your natural language question and building something out of this. So there is a lot of efficiency that is coming in place. It will help alleviate project managers from any mundane or redundant kind of tasks that take time, actually. So you, as a project manager, would only focus on what is needed, which is actually, oh, okay, we need to kind of align our resources for a certain project milestone, or we need to escalate a certain issue or whatever. So it's more about emptying your schedule into more something that is using your actual skill as a PM at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Mena, just following up on that, because
Yeah.
I know that Microsoft are a huge company. You have different people who manage different products.
Yes.
And for project managers, I mean, I used to use Microsoft Project. I think it was Project for the Web, Project Online, and
Yeah.
then Project Desktop, and there were different types.
Yes.
And they all had things that I wanted and had things or didn't have things that I also wanted, right? So they're always missing something, and I always used to cross through with them. So you've just mentioned Copilot in Project. Can you speak a bit more to the features within it? Because for our listeners, they're being exposed to many different project management tools, and there are different features across all of them, from report generations itself to putting information in using natural language, just using chatbots. Could you speak to some of those specific features in Copilot for projects?
So the features were the ones that I already mentioned, but there are also features that are not yet there. It will not, for example, it will provide you with a framework for the report, but you're the one who needs to provide more on the narrative, for example. That's one thing. Another thing is the dependencies between the different milestones, and the assigning who is responsible for what. This is again part of what the PM will be doing. So I would say it's still at the beginning. But I say it's like for the automated work breakdown structure or the risk mitigation kind of, it helps you focus on what is really at risk, and it brings it up to kind of tell you, okay, there is an action that needs to be done there. But again, at the end of the day, let's agree that it's still at the beginning, and at the same time, there is still a big part that the PM needs to be doing in terms of how can I take this knowledge or understanding and apply it to the real projects.
Yeah.
So that's how I view it from my
And that's the human in the loop, right? And this is what a lot of people,
Exactly.
they get a lot of comfort when you say to them, like, these tools, doesn't matter whether it's Copilot or any of them, you still need the domain expertise to make the best use of them. So we had a brilliant, it was probably a year ago, wasn't it, Yossi, where the lady from the London Property Association came on and talks about the bookending approach, which was human at the beginning, use the AI in the middle, and the human at the end to verify. And I think that's still as good advice today as it was when I first heard it a year ago, with all of these tools, and use it to do what I love about Copilot is exactly what you said. It can take away a lot of that grunt work. But what's great about the Microsoft within a trusted environment, because when you're using ChatGPT on its own, like the free version, you've got no idea where that's going, right?
Exactly.
When you use DeepSeek, you definitely got no idea where that's going. So, but when you use Copilot Chat, or you're using it within Copilot, and it's the organization's Copilot, you don't have to worry about the security because Microsoft's taking care of that. So, can you just explain what the difference is? Because I know there's a lot of people listening to this who are reluctant to use AI because of the concern, and there's a real opportunity to say to them, well, if you're worried, do it through Copilot.
Okay. I think the main point or importance here is how we're handling data. And this is not, so here we're leaning on the Azure infrastructure built-in security. And this is where one of the things that you will find is that we take our time to onboard different products. Not every single announcement we will be having the update, because one of the things that we need to be ensuring is that it's abiding by our security boundaries, that is going to be fitting into that. And this is where there's a lot of areas where we're talking about responsible AI. It's really about how can we make this, as if it's something that is available for everyone, how can we make it safer? How can we ensure that no harm is made from that? And so on. So that's the, let's say, the top priority whenever we are integrating Copilot or any AI tool within our infrastructure. But again, the entire security and governance is not something new. You are integrating with this wider existing strong environment. And not only this, you will be seeing that all the tools are talking to each other.
Yeah.
So there is no boundary where you fall short at some point and say, oh, this is going to stop here. The more, as of course that everyone knows right now, every single tool we have right now is AI enabled in a way or another, and most
Powered by AI, isn't it? That's what every company says.
exactly. And this is one of the most recent, for example, announcements that we did in FabCon was that within Fabric, which is our data platform, you can start talking to your data and integrate this data into other kind of, the bigger application. So this is kind of showing that whatever Copilot or AI technology that you will be using, the boundaries are lesser and there is more collaboration across this to make your job easier. So you wouldn't be thinking of, how will I be integrating this? How will I be using this? Do I need to be authorized to use this? It's all about being authorized to use this within the organization. And this is ultimately where we are putting more and more from the security side on. If, for example, anyone copied and pasted something that is confidential or PII, there is a security posture right now that actually alerts the organization that this has taken place.
Within Copilot?
It's within the security
Within Azure?
posture.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not only integrating with our AI tools, so it's actually also giving this possibility for the wider chat GPT and so on. So if an organization chooses to mix between different AI flavors, the public chat GPT and Microsoft's Copilots, you can actually, using Microsoft security posture, you can actually capture any kind of, let's say, violations to security that are put in the organization. And this is something that I'm seeing a lot of the organizations are really worried about, what will happen to the data. And I think one thing that is very important is, do you have your data labeled today in the organization, labeled correctly? So that's what Copilot will be using.
Yeah,
that's
because it's interesting. You talked about Fabric there, because obviously the AI is as good as the data, and the beauty of Copilot is it can link to your Azure environment and then make use of all that incredible data. But one of the things, especially in the industry, project delivery industry, and particularly in construction, a lot of people will be in construction listening to this, but I think it'll be the same in most industries, is our data, we've got the data, but it's in a terrible shape, right? And we haven't labeled it correctly. We haven't got it all organized into a proper kind of database. I'm hearing from a few people, and we had, was it Alan Mosca from Nplan the other week, who's the CTO of this project scheduling AI software, saying, well, it's not as important if you've got the data, having it fully labeled and 100% perfect structure is not as important as it once was for these large language models, because as long as you've got the data, it can make sense of less structured data. Is that true?
So it can make, so I think the point that I was trying to link in was, if the organization has some documents lying around having confidential data, and those documents are never labeled, and I start asking Copilot questions, it will easily access those documents, get whatever data inside it, and answer you. But again, large language models, and especially when we are talking about Copilot is more towards whatever you give it, it will work on. So if you give it access to your email, to your Teams, this is what it will work on. But also, whenever I personally use Copilot to ask it a question, it goes through my emails, my Teams meetings, and also it goes through the internal organization's open documents.
Yes.
So whatever is there, I have access to. And this is where the boundaries need to be, not from a labeling clean perspective of the data.
In terms of security.
It's more about the security of Who has access to it? Do we have the right users on the database, or anyone can just ask any question and get the answer? So
I get it now. Okay.
yeah.
So basically, are you saying that if you're in your organization and you've got a document which has got everyone's salaries on it, let's say, for instance,
Exactly.
and you haven't labeled that as
Yes.
secure, and then
Yes.
someone can go into Copilot and say, can you tell me the salary of Yoshi?
Yes.
Unless you've told it that it's security conscious, that's the risk, right?
Exactly. And interestingly, the exact example that you're telling me, I've been asked about this particular question, like not less than 40 or 50 times.
Oh, really?
Since
Okay, that's
we,
the big one.
since we announced Copilot and the Gen AI capabilities, this is exactly the same question with the same concern. Can someone just go in and ask, what's the CIO's salary, and get the answer? Well, the answer is, can they do this today on your database? They will if they can. So Copilot only inherits the security or the labels that you already have. It will work with this.
So if there's a vulnerability within your SharePoint, it was there already. So that example that we just talked about, salaries, in theory, somebody could have gone into SharePoint and searched for that file because it wasn't labeled. It just so happens that you've asked it a query and it's answered you in natural language.
Exactly.
I think it's also worth mentioning as well, Mena, because we spoke about Fabric, and the one thing that me and James were interested in at the time was the fact that with Fabric you're able to mirror data, and this isn't exactly AI, but it's an enabler for AI. Can you just speak to that feature of mirroring, because I think it's quite powerful?
So mirroring, currently the concept behind it is that we're trying to replicate data in a near real-time manner without the need of what we call the ETL, or the extraction, transform, and load, where we usually used to do this as part of the data engineering. So this is what we used to have in it, like normally that's a burden or something that you are always responsible just to ensure that it has read the right lines, rows, whatever. But in mirroring, it's setting like a secure channel between the source and Fabric, and it starts replicating this. So whatever update takes place in the source, this is reflected. The good news is we are adding more and more data sources to have this mirroring capability. So it's not going to stop at whatever is available right now. So Azure SQL database and some other data sources are enabled. But the bigger plan is that we want to have more of this, because this will make life much easier. You wouldn't be caring about, I need to be doing an ETL or troubleshooting a job here or there. It's more about, this will be transparently transferring this data. And from there, since it becomes part of the one lake, it's easily accessible with every single engine that is there inside Fabric. So if you want to do some data science on it, or if you want to do some data warehousing on it, you can do this. So
that's really interesting. So if you're a legacy organization and you've got data all over the place, rather than moving it, or you can effectively label it, and I guess it acts a bit like Dropbox. It creates an alias of these files. It doesn't bring, and I guess that's good for storage costs, right, as well, because you're not creating another version of all of these files, which can get very expensive. So I think that's really interesting, and people listening will be really interested to know that there is this feature that enables you to, I like you say, it's an enabler. You can get going a lot faster because you don't have to go through the pain of moving all your files.
Exactly.
Yeah, really interesting. Right, I just want to move on to sort of blind spots, right? Because a lot of people are rolling out or trying to roll out AI within their organizations, and that includes Copilot. What's the kind of one blind spot you've seen where somebody's maybe failed with an implementation? It doesn't have to be of Copilot, it could be of any AI solution. Is there a kind of feature that exists in all of those kind of failed kind of ways of getting AI out there, or was it different every time?
I think a lot of I've come across cases where organizations might have deployed Copilot, but no one is really using it, as you mentioned earlier. And that's a huge blind spot, because the organization has invested in having this technology. If no one is using it, then you're not getting value out of the money that you've invested in.
Very good point.
And this is where I think one blind spot is that people really need to understand, how can they use those tools? I mean, congratulations on deploying it everywhere in the organization. But if this is not being, if people are not being empowered to understand, okay, how can they use it? When can they use it? What are their boundaries? And get this kind of flow going, will have no clue. I mean, the other day I was delivering to a group of professionals, and they had it in the organization. And after the session I did, they're like, we'll start using it today. It's already there, but we never used it. But after we learned the value, we're super enthusiastic to start using it. And that's the kind of enthusiasm you need in any organization to make AI successful. Otherwise, it would be just forgotten in the shadows, and everyone will get going in what they're used to be doing.
Yeah, we've seen that definitely. It's really difficult. The technology is almost becoming the easy bit now. We talk it's the cultural change, and then what you said there, the amount of people that I know where an organization has obviously spending the money on Copilot, but they haven't even told anyone. It's never mind about doing more in terms of training. Nobody even knows it's been deployed.
Exactly.
They've just added it onto their Microsoft 365 package. So I think a big part of it is the training, but even that's hard. I've seen situations where you show someone Copilot. Let's take PowerPoint as an example. You show somebody, oh look, this is what you can do with Copilot in PowerPoint. Boom, create a presentation, an amazing presentation, really, really quickly. And they look at it, they go, wow, that's amazing. Like you think, oh, their light bulb moment's gone off. Then you see them the next week and they're doing it they're just gone back to doing it the way they normally do it because they forget. Or they just think, oh, I'll do that next time. Yeah. So do you think education is the main way? Just keep showing people the realities?
Yeah, I mean, education is the wider umbrella, but I think also while you were speaking, I would designate what I would call an AI champ within each kind of department. And this AI champ needs to be within the department. So if it's someone in the finance or the marketing, I mean, they need someone who would be speaking the same language and would show them, how is it done in our world? How is it done in this world of finance? I can use Copilot for Excel, and this will make a huge difference in saving time and make it me more efficient. And this is something until and unless organizations start to have more adoption of AI, you will need this AI champ in every department if you want to make AI successful.
That's interesting. In department level, I hadn't heard it as a department level before. It makes sense,
I would suggest that because each department, again, this is something I've seen when I've worked with different departments. Each department has its language, and this is the jargon they prefer hearing. And from there, they would be happy to be guided. So that's
Did Microsoft look at the cultural adoption of Excel and learn from that and trying to apply it with AI?
Can you clarify the question?
Because Excel is a tool that every business uses, right? It exists everywhere. And one of the commonalities I believe that it shares with AI is the fact that it can do pretty much everything, right? You can use it for many functions and departments. Yes. But so in looking to build adoption within businesses, could or did Microsoft look at what went well with Excel and think, right, we can apply that into AI in terms of companies adopting it?
I think we have a lot of similar kind of examples. So again, I cannot answer on the behalf of the bigger strategy, but I would say there are two things. So Excel is an example and Power BI is another example.
Yeah.
We have seen how, and this is ultimately how Fabric came in the picture. We have seen how everyone is happy with Power BI. They're using it, they're depending on it. So how can we leverage that and make it the base of a bigger platform? Now, Excel definitely is a great example. And this is something that I believe it has been captured. But was it the reference? I wouldn't say that, because I would say this entire Gen AI, Chat GPT, Copilot era has a different kind of reference altogether. So even if we're trying to read the pattern, it's more about reading the current patterns, how people are adopting this and how is it being effective or not. That's the real thing. And it's kind of approaching it from a fresh perspective rather than what worked in the past. Well, It worked well, but I think we need a different kind of tool set for this approach.
Yeah, because you mentioned Power BI, and one thing I think Power BI did really well was its traceability, or being able to understand every action you took. So when you
Yes.
were in Power Query, you can then see where something broke and then
Yes.
went back. And you guys then applied that to Fabric, I think, right? So you can actually start to see the actions you're taking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that traceability within AI is something that people are keen for, especially as we move into predictive models, right? When they're starting to have their own chain of thought, and it
Yes.
becomes more of a black box because you don't really know the input you're giving in. How is the AI thinking about your problem?
Yes.
Are Microsoft looking at traceability? Are they like, because Anthropic put a blog out recently about black boxes, right? And they have a initiative or a method around mechanistic interpretability. So it's like, how can we just conduct these specific unit tests to understand how the AI thinks? Do Microsoft do anything like that you know of?
Well, not that I know of. I would say the closest that I would match to that would be something like our reasoning model, which is the O1.
Yeah.
That's the closest that I would say to this, because it's more about, it's a person thinking, or not a person, it's something thinking, and it's sharing this its train of thought. How did it, for example, reach a certain conclusion? And it tells you the basis of how did it this build this on every single step. That's the closest. But is there more? Definitely, I would say that there would be more.
Mm.
I think that this is, again, a topic that is top of mind for our Microsoft research groups. So there is a lot of research being done there. What or how will this materialize? That's what we will be gradually reading as they develop. Definitely.
Yeah. Just on the thing about Excel, because you're so young, Yossi, you probably don't. It wasn't that. It's not like Excel. I'm old enough to remember like the advent of Excel. Even that wasn't like it was released and then everyone
Oh, really?
adopted it the next day. No, you still had people who were still using pens and paper, and you know, there are some parallels. Obviously, things will
Yeah.
move faster, but
Yes.
you know, this adoption curve, it's following a very similar curve to what happened with Excel. You know, if you think Excel came out in the late 80s, right? Probably it probably wasn't until the mid 90s, I'd say,
Oh,
that it was
right.
Okay.
widespread. So that was my first point.
Okay.
The other point I wanted to talk about was just like the pace of change, right? So I get a bit confused sometimes with OpenAI and Microsoft's relationship, because obviously Microsoft are a big investor in OpenAI.
Yes.
But then OpenAI have got partnerships with other people as well. And it all seems trying to work out how it's all involved. But what's good about Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI is that you get access to their models very, very early, and presumably access to a lot of their research early. So the next big thing that's coming out is agents, right? So,
Yes.
and in particular, the operators model. So the
Yes.
operator model is now available in the US for people on Pro. And then we were just talking before this podcast started recording, I've been given access to Manus, which is a similar thing to operator, which is blowing my mind. We'll do another session on that later. But as these new technologies, like these next iterations come out, so let's say operator, presumably that will start getting rolled into Copilot, because what people forget is that the worst version of AI, or the worst version of Copilot, is the one you use today. They're going to get better and better.
Yes.
So do you think things like operator will end up coming into Copilot as a way of people utilizing it?
I believe yes. And again, this is my personal reading from what we've been doing in the past. So a lot of the capabilities that have been announced, they get gradually embedded in what we have as the back end of the Copilot.
Yeah.
Now, again, there is more complexity in the back end that
Of
we
course.
cannot see. But again, you can see how it's behaving differently to the questions that you're asking. And as you rightly mentioned, today is just the beginning of a more developed version of how Copilot will be responding. And I remember the days, and again, when I say 2 years ago, it feels like a very long time right now.
It does.
From where we started. Because again, we had a lot of expectations. We were experimenting, but also it was still kind of at the very beginning. So it wasn't its best version. Today, we are seeing how it has become more human, for example, in the answers, how it's becoming more persuasive in how it's reaching its decisions. And I see that the more that we proceed and progress in this, the more we will be understanding or seeing a different kind of behavior, I would say more improved. Because at the end, when you want this to be your companion, your co-pilot, you really want to understand, you want to ensure that it's really picking up everything, that it's really working with you, picking
And it
all the
understands you, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think they are getting better for that.
Mhm.
Really fascinating stuff. But I can't believe it. We're really getting towards the end of the podcast. But I do want to pick up some sort of off-topic things. So I know you're doing a part-time PhD on AI and creativity, and I may have to pick your brains more, Mena, because we've both started a masters in AI. So you might be able to help us when we get stuck with some of our homework. But what's one insight from the journey that surprised you? Because I know you've got some really interesting information on that.
Okay. I just a small modification. So I've done a summer course on AI and creativity,
Yeah.
but my main topic is using AI for rainfall prediction in Ireland.
Wow.
And this is again, I love sustainability related topics. That was one of the main drives that I have. One thing that has surprised me is mainly the gap between the academic world and the professional world.
Yeah.
And I've always been striving to do a PhD that is relevant to my professional life.
Yeah.
And not to be something that I will take and maybe forget in a drawer or something. It's more about how can it be today having some kind of impact. Ultimately, that is the goal. But from the things that I've seen, like in the academic world, discussions, posters, conferences that I've attended, a lot of times people are presenting an idea as if it's brand new, but professionally, in the world of the technologies and solutions we're seeing, the solution already exists and they're improving.
Yeah.
So
I've seen that.
that's something I felt personally, somehow I wanted to be involved in this kind of linking those both worlds. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, and I've seen this through the masters that I've taken before. I did an MBA, and the best professors I had were the ones who had hands-on business. So
Yes.
they came in with
Always.
their professional experience and brought this in. So maybe we need more of those people in the computer science world, people who have seen it, done things, and they want to bring this on board to the students in the academic world. So that's mainly what I've been definitely surprised me. And the second thing is a PhD is different from anything that I've done before. It's 100% your own project. It's not dependent on, so masters is good because you have subjects, you have marks, scores, and you're safe after that. But a PhD, it's really about the research and the value of this research. And do you have a vision for that? And again, this is something that makes you think from a different perspective. You wouldn't normally be thinking of in a professional kind of context. So yeah, those are a couple of things.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said, but computer science, it often assumes a perfect world. And then you go into a business and it's never perfect.
Well,
And
this is why, James, as well, when you see a lot of the foundational models, one critique they always give is that can these LLMs solve problems in the real world? So you have real world performance benchmarks, but even then people say, even the coding performance, this model might code well, but it doesn't actually apply in the real world. So there's always that translation disconnect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And PhD, it sounds fascinating. I guess one of the things that must be difficult when doing a PhD is, because how long does it take? It's a good few years, isn't it, to get your PhD?
5-6 years.
I mean, you talk about if you go back 5 or 6 years ago, well, obviously even ChatGPT wasn't a thing. We didn't have large language models. So how do you research on something that things could fundamentally change in that time period? That must be quite tricky.
It is tricky. And I think one of the things that I have taken upon myself is using the technology that is available at hand. So so I began my PhD in 2021. And the main thing is that we didn't have a lot of the technologies we're talking about right now. But I think as I'm progressing, one thing that I'm keeping in mind, how can I use the latest technologies as part of what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And this is very tricky because it's really, I've put it upon myself as a responsibility, because I cannot be talking about brilliant traditional machine learning methods, but okay, how about the new foundation model that can help do the same? Have
Yeah.
I explored it as part of my experimentation? That is, let's say, the best that I can do. That whatever I have right now, I just want to make the most out of the current tools that are available. And from there, bring in more as I can see fit. And this is, again, it's really about, there is a lot of skill that you need to be building. So I need to refresh my programming skills to build a lot of the papers that and again, this is another part where in the beginning I was totally on my own, but right now with the GitHub Copilot and the different co-pilots around, I can really do this. And the commentary that you get on Visual Studio Code,
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
suggestions, I mean, this is mind-blowing because it's giving you ideas. And if you don't like it, I remember the other day I was experimenting with something and it didn't give the results that I'm expecting. So I had to troubleshoot it to properly fix the code as I see fit. And it's all about how you're phrasing your question. But again, at the end of the day, it really helped me code the majority of it. I just had to validate, okay, is this right? Is this making sense?
Which goes back to what we said, the book ending.
Exactly.
It's all about keeping the human in the loop.
Exactly. And I'm a believer that the human in the loop will continue to be there.
Yes.
Back to your...
Well, I hope so. I really
Yes.
do. Otherwise,
It's
what are we
very
all going to do?
important. It's very important because if you leave AI to its own kind of, biases and its own decisions, we will be in big trouble, honestly.
I think you're right. I'm coming around to that way of thinking, actually.
Yeah.
So, Mena, this is a great opportunity to actually ask you this question then, because a lot of as we improve the large language models and the intelligence we're getting from AI, there is now, discourse around the fact that they are PhD level reasoning.
Yeah.
Now, you started your PhD in 2021 and you've now, firsthand witnessed the technology come into play. And I'm assuming you would have been using it, from its inception to at this point. Can you actually feel that these models are at a PhD level capability because you're using it in your PhD?
Well, my personal evaluation that they are not yet there,
Okay.
because
That's
a
interesting.
lot of what we're doing. So part of doing a PhD is that you have this vision of how will this big project or how this idea will play out. So again, when you discuss this with whatever Gen AI technology, it just is limited with what it knows, but you will have the bigger picture on how you want this to play out and what kind of impact do you want to have. I see that there is a lot of possibility where it's the human kind of thought coming in the picture and redirecting where the Gen AI wants to take the discussion. So yeah, that's how I see it.
That was a great question, Yoshi. Actually, from someone doing a PhD.
Yeah.
So the big thing is that not quite yet. But let's ask you again when you come back on the show, please, God, in a few months' time, and see if it is there. Listen, Mena, one more question actually before we wrap up. I know we've gone a bit over time, but it's been such a fabulous conversation. We just wanted to get all these questions in. So, can you just tell us about something outside of tech or work that inspires your thinking? Because I know you've been really...
Yeah. So besides what I'm doing professionally and the PhD and stuff, I'm part actually of a nonprofit organization called Human Foundation. It's in Egypt, and I owe them a lot of who I am today because there are a lot of programs to help each individual understand, their journey in life. And one major program that I'm currently actually facilitating also after I took it is a program called A Path Towards Individuation. And that's mainly dependent on Carl Jung's approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mainly about that, each part of our lives, our childhood and our current age, each part has its own kind of areas we might not have explored. So a very important thing in today's world is really understanding yourself and where are you coming from and why is that certain comment, it irritated you, although from the outside it seems okay. But also, how do you view your entire life? And again, this really, and because I took it early in I started it in 2007, 2008. and there were a lot of iterations until I became a facilitator in this program. One of the things that really made a huge difference, that it really showed me that there is more inside me that I can do. And there is more potential beyond all the boundaries, all the, the known stuff of, oh, you have a good job, you're fine. There is more capability that I have explored as being part of this. And this, I would always say, it has opened a door inside me that there is much, much more than I see to myself. And again,
Wow.
the exploration is never ending. The lady who is leading this organization she's called Dr. Alia Arafa. She's already a professor back in Egypt, and she's leading all those activities.
Wow.
And she's really putting this not only in this program, but also in understanding the civilization of the Egyptian culture. And we do a lot of other workshops, but it's really about how can we just open that small door inside you or window to know that you're more than just, I'm this person working in this place and that's it. There is more to you, and that's more important to you than anyone else. This changes how you approach life, how you approach situations, that there is much more than, being just an interaction that you didn't like or you liked. It's more about, okay, what is the deeper perspective for me? And one last thing that I would say would designate this is what we call the introspection, is really going deep inside and understanding, I like this situation, I love this place, but what's happening inside? That's the real question.
Yeah, it's very profound. I mean, and what you said there, everyone's got that. There's more.
Yes.
I firmly believe that none of us are using our full potential, and we're very much limited by certain beliefs that we've got and certain cultures, etc., etc. And for me, I started meditation probably about nearly 20 years ago. That's been the big changer for me because of that introspection that I give myself that time. It's really, really important. That sounds amazing. If you can share us the details, we'll put it in the show notes. If people are interested, where can they find out more about Human Foundation?
I can share the website and definitely
awesome.
I can share more details on how to contact them. Like the programs right now since COVID, a lot of them are online.
Yeah.
So that has opened a lot of space.
Yeah.
I've had people attending from the US, people from, different time zones in one place. That is really making a huge difference because wherever you are, you come in the call for 2 hours a week and just, dedicate this time for yourself. And again, how this is being done is that the facilitator is really dedicating their time to you. The answers to the questions that we share and the interactions, it's a kind of one-to-one dedicated attention to every individual that is attending this program. So
fantastic.
It's really as you mentioned, it is profound, and the impact I have tested firsthand. And this is something, I really wish everyone had access to, definitely.
Yeah. Well, people don't realize there is, lots of resources. We were talking about at the beginning about resources about AI, but there's also lots of resources out there for things like this. And isn't it interesting, right, that the more we do this podcast, the more and more we seem to ending the podcast on conversations about being human. We had Anthony Slumbers on recently and saying in an AI world, how we're able to deal with introspection, how we're able to deal with emotional intelligence, all those things are going to become even more important. Never did I think that setting up an AI podcast, we'll spend so much time talking about being human. But when you think about it, it's absolutely right, isn't it? Because where the AI is going to dehumanize, we need to find a replacement for that. So I'm really pleased that you were able to tell us about your experience with Human Foundation.
That's right.
And really, Mena, just thank you so much for an incredible chat. Really, really enjoyed talking to you. And we really hope that you will come back on, not least because I want an answer to the question about whether it has reached PhD capacity in a few months' time. But is there any final words from you before we sign off?
I mean, thank you very much. I have really enjoyed the conversation. I loved how we flew between different topics and we genuinely shared what we think of them. And as you mentioned, like the human factor is going to become more and more important in this Gen AI empowered world. And this is where we really need to go back to ourselves. Definitely looking forward to come back and have another conversation with another, maybe learning that I believe that we're learning really. I mean, we're learning every single day of our lives.
Yes.
And the perspectives that we have really change. So yeah, definitely looking forward to another podcast. And I thank you, James. I thank you, Yoshi, for this opportunity. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who has been listening.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
See you next time, Mena.
See ya. Thank you. Bye.
Project Flux is here.
That's a wrap for today's episode. But before you go, exciting news. Project Flux is teaming up with Project Management Global to bring you the latest in AI-driven project delivery and essential management insights. Through this partnership, expect weekly AI insights, practical tools, and expert thought leadership, ensuring you stay ahead in the evolving project landscape. Stay tuned for exclusive content, joint research, and strategies to supercharge your project outcomes. You can learn more at www.pm-global.co.uk and be part of the future of project management. See you later.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.